Hello, and welcome to Season 7 of the FODcast, the podcast focused on the future of digital commerce hosted by Simply Commerce. Season 7 promises to continue to bring you some of the industry's brightest minds across the globe as we unpick the sector and where it's heading. From war stories to strategy and technology deep dives to future trends, we cover it all as we continue our journey to have one of the most popular podcasts in commerce. Before we start, if you enjoy our content, please do hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on, like and share on socials. Hello, and welcome back to Season 7 of the FODcast, the future of all things digital commerce. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Simon Hamblin, co-founder of one of the UK's most successful Shopify agencies, FuseFabric. I've been hoping to have Simon on the show for a while. PJ and himself have built an awesome business in FuseFabric, and his background in digital speaks for itself. So it's with great pleasure I'll welcome him on the show today as we break down why technology-led projects fail and just how important the discovery process is in your digital transformation. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks, James. Happy to be here today.
Thank you for joining me. So look, before we start, do you want to give a quick summary on your background?
Sure. So notable experiences and my background include very much being a CTO, CIO for a lot of my career. I was head of technology at ASOS.com, the fashion retailer, for 8 years. I was actually employee number 2 into the technology team back in the early 2000s and was with
Wow.
the business, growing it to its through its hyper growth phase, should we say, up to £1 billion turnover, and very much through its internationalization phase as well. Moving on from there, I went into the finance industry, worked in Bitcoin in the mid 2010s, set up the UK's largest Bitcoin exchange in the mid 2010s, and had some fun doing that. Done some scale ups and startups as well in my time, and then notably moved on to be global CTO for Emirates Group within the travel division, which is looking after 30 different travel brands around the world. Some of them you might know, such as Emirates Holidays and Net Flights, Travel Bag, Travel Republic, those sorts of brands around the world, and looking after the technology across multiple countries. I then had a role as interim CTO at Missima. So Missima is a jewelry retailer in the UK. At the time was one of the fastest growing companies in the UK, under 100 million turnover. And I was interim CTO there. And that's when I got introduced to Shopify through an emergency implementation. Happy to talk about that in a bit more detail shortly. And that's when I got introduced to Shopify, and I thought, do you know what? There's something in this Shopify. It's, as technologists, it's hard to get excited about technology sometimes because you see so much of it, and there's a lot of crossover and overlap, but actually coming across a platform that piques your interest, that then made us think about, okay, well, is there a business in this? Is there something that we could make the most of from a business perspective? So we got involved in Shopify, and that's PJ and myself, and we founded FuseFabric. And then fast forward nearly 5 years, and FuseFabric is Shopify's largest partner in Europe for enterprise customers. We're a fully remote organization. We are headcounts just over about 85 people spread across Europe. And we operate for the likes of Boden, the fashion retailer, Flying Tiger Copenhagen from the High Street, Newcastle United Football Club, which is very prevalent as they won their cup on the weekend. And I suppose we the differentiator for us is that we're more than just Shopify. Obviously, our world centers around Shopify at the core of our services, but we're very much in that enterprise level, looking at all the complexities. How do you fit Shopify back into your existing landscape? What does your whole enterprise architecture look like? What does your organizational design look like? How is the business going to operate? How are we going to integrate things? So obviously we look at Shopify, but we also look at the whole picture as well, which is a key differentiator for us versus other people in the Shopify space.
I was going to say from where I'm sat, obviously the background that PJ and yourself have definitely looks to be a key differentiator between FuseFabric and the other Shopify agencies out there. Obviously, there's no shortage of competition in the UK market right now, even more so with Shopify agencies coming into the UK market from North America and the Nordics. But having that background within like complex enterprise, retail, and digital transformations is definitely something that sets you apart. And I think that's probably a big reason for the success that you guys have had so far. So look, I think it's probably best if we just jump straight in and get started, and we kick things off with why do technology-led projects fail every time?
Sure. So where to start? Um, I think we feel quite passionately about this. I think it's because as CTOs, a group of CTOs and CIOs that sort of founded Fuse Fabric, and in addition to that, we have increased, I should say, our experience with Fuse Fabric by bringing more CTOs into the organization as well that can share their experiences with our clients. And there's just a very common thread that it's very hard and very rare that technology-led projects actually succeed. And to your point, why is that? Why do we believe that, or why have we seen that? Typically, it's because technology is the enabler for transformations. It's not necessarily the leader of the transformation. And somebody in the business doesn't necessarily wake up one morning and think, okay, I just need to implement Shopify, or, for example, or an e-commerce platform. Let's take the name out of it, an e-commerce platform, or I'm going to implement an ERP today. That's not where it comes from. It comes from the need. The business needs to be a better visibility of its operations and its finances. That would then result in the fact that there is a technology transformation underneath it, or we need to improve our customer experience and customer journey, and be able to be in control of the content on our website. That would then generate the need for, implementing some kind of technology solution. And so the point is that it's key, obviously, that the businesses are driving their roadmap and the technologies enabling that. And then when it comes to projects, it's all about getting everybody on board and getting the business on board and getting everyone behind it. And the business is driving the decisions and the requirements, and the technology partners and internal teams are then there to support, the delivery of the technology, support those requirements. So I just find from my experience, I've not seen, a project where technology are leading and making decisions on behalf of the business, a successful model, because the business at the end of the day have to operate with what they've been given in that particular model. And how do the technology teams know what the business want? If they're just leading and making decisions, how do they know where the business is going in the strategy? So it should always be led by the business, business strategy with the business people involved, that then is delivered by the technology teams. I also think that a really good example of that is, sort of a good example of that is Missima. I still think that comes back to a good story around Missima and the way that we migrated multi-million-pound business onto Shopify in 8 days from idea to go live. So that was the question: can we get onto Shopify? How quickly can we get to Shopify to actually go live? Was 8 solid days. That's it. As I said, there was a bit of an emergency implementation, and Mr. at the time had around 60 people in headcount within the business. So the way that we made that happen wasn't what the technology were leading it. The business had a requirement, we had to move it, and then getting everybody on the same page and pointing them in the same direction and running that process really tightly, and then listening to the business. That's the way that we then delivered on the business requirements, rather than sort of just technology leading the implementation.
8 days though, that's fast, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not
it's
often you hear about.
unprecedented. It was
Yeah.
long weekends as well just to make it happen.
Did the team
But I
sleep?
think it just proves the point that if you get everybody pointing in the right direction from a business perspective, just how fast you can actually move, to that endpoint solution. Obviously, we don't advocate for 8 days on any project, but it's just an example of what happens when you get everybody in the right space and you include the business on that process.
No, no, I know you mentioned that obviously technology don't make the decisions, but what we do find sometimes is that the business might make a decision, but they make a decision based on a technology, not necessarily on the business. For example, we've been involved in many a conversation where a client has said, we need to implement Shopify
Yep.
or any other e-commerce platform for that matter. And or a big one was we need to move composable. Obviously, there's been a big move towards composable over the last 5 years. And it seems as though, obviously, I'm not sat there discussing their needs in depth. I'm not doing discoveries, etc. But it seems as though they're making these decisions because that is the cool thing to do. That is what the competitors are doing. That
Yep.
is what they believe they should do based on the marketing in the markets. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's a middle ground. And I think that's what you're alluding to. And that does absolutely happen. We often have people come to us and say, look, we've chosen it. I was discussing this morning, actually. People come to us and say, we've chosen Shopify. It is obviously Shopify. It's the leader, right? It's proven in the market it's the leader. My peers are using it. Our competition's using it. My research tells me Shopify is the right platform. So actually, it is Shopify until we can prove otherwise during the discovery process. So rather than run a long-winded RFP process and lots of beauty parades of different partners and solutions, we've chosen Shopify, and we need to continue along that track until something comes up that says it's not that, which never yet come across that case. But great way of thinking, really fast approach to market. Having said that, that's absolutely fine. They're leading with a solution, but again, they're doing it because they have a need. They know that they need to improve the customer experience or manage their content or the better order management system, whatever it is that their need is, and they've decided that just Shopify is the solution. That's absolutely fine. I'm okay with that. But I still then reiterate the point, even within the project of delivering that Shopify solution, that it is business requirements, business led, the business making decisions on how they want it to look, feel, how they want the business to operate, how do they do order management, customer management, finance management, operations, whatever it is, that's still being led by the business. And then the technology teams are delivering on those requirements. So my comment still stands, even if it is that the business are leading with a solution, going, I really need to implement this. They're only thinking that because they have a problem, and that's
Mm.
fine. They've agreed on that. And that's absolutely fine. Don't have a problem with that. But it's still that the business should be leading those transformations.
I think that then leads into the discovery phase, as you touched upon, is to make sure that it's not just a case of, right, we're going to implement Shopify as an example. Let's go ahead. It's okay. This is our platform of choice. Now let's really understand how we're going to implement it, what features we need to get out of it, and actually go through the process of a full discovery to make sure that A, it's the right platform, and B, they then maximize it.
Yeah, yeah, and the first step in, so we've covered off the fact that we've decided we have a business requirement that needs a technical solution, or we've decided or we've gone one step further and decided it's already Shopify, right? Doesn't really matter. That's where we are in our cycle, and then the next thing after that is okay, sounds good. We need to do that. I agree. Next question is what am I actually going to get? What does it look like in the future? How long is it going to take? Yeah, what's the plan? And how much is it going to cost me? Right? It doesn't matter who you are in the business. If you're a shareholder, you're a owner of the business, you're a director of the business, you're a C-suite member, you're part of the SLT, you're one of the team. It doesn't matter. Everyone's got the same questions on their mind. They all want to know, what am I going to get? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost, right? And that ultimately is the point of the discovery process. But also at an enterprise level, there's an additional question was, how the hell are we going to get rid of all our 15-year-old architecture and fit something modern as like Shopify into this? Because we've got all this legacy stuff that we deal with. It's spaghetti. How on earth are we going to put something like that in? What does it mean? How are we going to change? How do we change the way we operate as a business, right? So you have this additional question in addition to the basics of what, when, and how much. And all of that we would answer during a discovery phase. That's the ultimate outcome of the discovery phase. And it doesn't mean that you come out of discovery phase with the nth degree of detail and say, yeah, on this particular one, on this date to this pound to this is the actual scope. It's not about that. It's about saying, look, roughly this is your scope of what you've asked for. The plan is, got some kind of level of tolerance within it, some contingency, 20, 30% contingency, and the same with the budget. And everybody knows that if you've done transformations before, scope will change, things will change, partners involved, people involved. There's an element of changing. Same when you build a house or you extend your house. you never go into that thinking that's the price. You've always got a contingency. It's the same when you're building software or doing digital transformations. It's no different. Um, but the point is that you need to come out of discovery with something that everyone's comfortable with and can stand behind. And also reflects all areas of the business. Again, this is where we say, what, if you said to me, okay, what is a business-led project? What does that actually mean? It just basically means involving all areas of the business. So that includes every element. So, including the marketing teams, including the legal teams, right? Including the people and culture teams, because there's a transformation that's affecting people's roles and responsibilities within the business. So, and of course the e-com teams, customer care teams, operation team, finance teams, but it's including everybody. So everybody has a view, everybody has an input into their requirements, so that there are no surprises when you come to actually go into, or very few surprises. You're limiting the chances of surprises when you go into delivery. So making sure everyone's involved in the discovery, the right people are involved in discovery is absolutely key. And then essentially, as I said, we're going to run a series of workshops to understand the requirements across those different areas. We understand scope, we understand the business strategy, we understand the scope that aligns the strategy. We can then work out what the phasing is, because maybe it's a multi-phase. We're doing international first before the big main market. Or maybe it's this B2B first versus D2C. So you come out with a plan, and then you've also got a budget aligned to that as well, from platform costs to also operational costs as well. How are you going to support the platform going forward? So that process is absolutely key. And we really stand behind that. So it's not about doing a waterfall project necessarily. That it's not that at all. But there is an element of, everybody needs to know what they're walking into, before it happens. And it's also a gated process. So the business can decide at that point, you know what? No, we can't invest that level. We thought we could, but we can't. Or actually, we want to change the delivery shape of it. We want to go, actually, we're happy to put the main business first and do international afterwards, or whatever the decision is. Or, so there's a conversation that can happen that will then shape delivery. So it's a gated process that this business can decide to, stop, go, or change the shape of the delivery going forward. But it's absolutely fundamental to success, to getting that discovery piece done. It also flushes out the nasty stuff, the really hard stuff, because that's the last thing you want in delivery. Everyone goes into delivery going, yep, we got a date, and everybody knows what they think they're going to do. And then they come to understand some difficult areas like taxes and duties on international. They're suddenly realizing, okay, well, hold on, how are we going to do this? And that's going to delay the project. So if you're going into a project going, okay, we've already discussed it, we know it's a problem area, and in fact, we've already solved some of that in discovery because we've had the time to go and discuss it. Or we're carrying that risk into the project, so everybody knows when we get to this piece, it's going to be a little bit difficult, and those expectations are managed, and you sort of mean everything is it's not a surprise again. Or you decide there's a number of difficult areas that we are worried about as a business. So before we go into delivery, we're actually going to do like a 4 or 8 week piece, POC, so proof of concept phase, where we're just going to take that really hard stuff and we're just going to really drill down on those areas so that we can get more comfortable, and we get more comfortable that the platform can handle it, the scope is right, that it doesn't impact the plan, or does impact the plan by this, and actually the cost is still the cost, or it's changed the cost, and we understand why that would change the cost. So you you can manage that through and then build that into a small proof of concept phase before going into delivery. And ultimately, all we're trying to do is make sure when we go into delivery, it's the most predictable outcome, and least surprises possible.
Yeah, Joe, at the start of that, I love how you reference it to building an extension and the architecture behind it, and just the fact that, cool, that's the blueprint, that's how it will likely go ahead. But actually, you need a contingency plan, and there's a good chance that there's going to be hiccups along the way, right? And actually, how can we
Yeah,
deal with those? And I think that was
yeah.
a really good analogy. I mean, you've just listed off like 1,000,001 important reasons why discovery is so important, and the benefits from it. But yet, what I often find when I'm speaking to people in the space is that one of the main reasons the transformations fail, is because the discovery wasn't in depth enough.
Mhm.
What I'd be interested to know, Simon, is why do you think companies skimp out when it comes to a discovery? Is it the cost? Is it the time? Is it the agency involved not knowing what they're doing and going into enough detail? Maybe a combination of everything.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a combination of everything, as you say. I think that some partners in the space don't recognize the fact that a discovery needs to go across the entire business. You need to look at all the operational processes, not just when people think, for example, Shopify, an e-commerce platform, they're concentrating very much on the front end, on the customer user experience. And I am not for 1 minute saying that is not important, but it's not the be all and end all. It's also about what's the operating model for it's an e-commerce platform. It's almost more than an e-commerce platform with the amount of features available in Shopify. So it's how's the whole business going to operate, not just how's the website going to look for the customer at the end of the day. So it's really important that the discovery is all encompassing across the business. Forgive me, I've forgotten lost my train of thought. What was your question?
Just around why companies
Oh
often
yeah,
don't
why
do
did they go
in
short?
depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So other things that I see with discovery is that businesses don't necessarily want to do the depth of discovery sometimes, or they're not quite understanding why they need to do a discovery. Why can't they just just get on and implement a front end website? I think if you're not recognizing that you need to do some level of discovery, then perhaps your experience in transformations is not quite there. So it's just about taking people on a journey and helping them understand why the discovery process is important. But also, you actually dig into that. Those leaders in the business anyway are being asked, as I said, as by a shareholder or C-suite member, well, how long is this going to take, or how much is it going to cost? You're having to answer those questions. But discovery can be done in different ways, different depths. So we always cover the width, right? We always cover every part of the business. But if somebody wants to do a quick discovery, because they're like, look, we're at this part of right at the beginning of the journey, we're ideating, we're thinking about it. We just want to know roughly how much, how long, and what are we going to get? I just want to know a rough idea. That's fine. We'll run a discovery that's just not so in depth in areas. So we just skim across the top, get a good idea. We have a good amount of experience, and we can just draw an experience and roughly gauge the conversation. But we still go the full width. So we still go, across the whole business. Others are at the other end of the spectrum, which is we've chosen Shopify. It's a go. We've already got a provisional board approval. We know we know because we've done this before roughly how much we need to approve for. It's a go, so we need to go. We need to get into it, and we also want to make it as predictable as possible in delivery. Well, in that case, then it's still the same width, but it's a lot more in depth. So rather than going across a number of workshops at a shallow depth, we might go across, say, 20 plus workshops to get to that depth of information to come out of it with a real, predictable plan and a predictable budget. So my point is, depending on where you are in your journey, I just thinking about it we've chosen it, we're doing it. We would, you can change your level of depth of discovery and how deep you go, and therefore the predictableness of the outcome, but you would always maintain the width. You wouldn't just go, do you know what, we just won't talk to this particular area of the business because you're still not seeing the whole picture. So you
Okay.
can vary it basically to your said where you are in your journey of transformation.
Nice. So I guess that just goes back to the importance of having the business buying and being business led, because if you're running 20 workshops, that's a lot of different people involved.
Yes.
So there we go. Cool. So
Yeah.
just really quickly then, you've run your discovery, then how do you set it up for success?
One of those, a couple of them. One point is from a technical perspective. I'll lead on that one just because of a point earlier that I meant to make, which is around that enterprise architecture. So the other outcome of discovery, in addition to what am I going to get, how long is it going to take, and how much is it going to cost, is also what does that whole architecture look like? What all my systems look like on one page? And that is really key because that's like your North Star from a technical perspective. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of technical output that's going to support those business requirements. A good example of that is when we implemented for Bowden. They spent a long time internally and with our partners at the time trying to understand all their as-is systems. And you can imagine very complex architecture, lots of legacy as well, and trying to unpick it all. And one of the processes we did there was basically come in, we understood all the systems. We wrote down the as-is architecture on one page, we wrote down the target architecture on another page, and then we came up with a phased approach that Bowden could use to enter into that. So depending on their risk appetite and budget appetite, i.e., am I going all in or am I just going to do the bare minimum? They hit about the middle. They had those options, if you like, and they could see that architecture change over time as to get to the target architecture. And once we've chosen that middle ground, that was the architecture that was used throughout the digital transformation that lasted over a year and that we've implemented at Bowden. And it's absolutely key. So everybody knows the direction, that they're traveling in. So that's key as well. People understand where are we trying to get to, at least from a technical perspective. And then I think the other one is, although it sounds a really boring word, it's the governance word. It's how do you manage the project itself? How do you manage that transformation? How do you create communication throughout the business, the transparency of progress, but also issues as well? And how do you keep everybody on board and motivated towards that goal? And governance is the way, and having an effective governance model is absolutely key. And part of that governance model is also having a really strong steering group. And a strong steering group for me from experience is having that top-down leadership. So having the real, the leaders of the business as part of the project and overseeing the project, but also the mechanics of that steering group as well. I've been in too many steering groups in my time where it's a one-way communication, as in it's the project team telling the steering what's happening on the project, steering, asking a few probing questions, and then just getting upset at the things that perhaps are not going that well on the project. That's not an effective steering group. That's just a project update. That's not a real steering group. A real steering group is one that obviously is receiving the communications about what's happening within the transformation, but they're also there helping to solve. They're helping to remove the blockers for the team. They're helping to offer to get involved as well. And also it's about escalation. So perhaps the working group have made a decision or can't make a decision because they just feel it's so strategic that the leadership team needs to make that decision. It's about surfacing that up and saying, hey, you can go for option A or you can go for option B. What do you want to do? Steering love it. And trust me, when you get a good steering, they love it. They're just like, this is fantastic. I actually get to be part of the project and help drive the project forward. I can do it at a steering level, and I know I'm helping the team and I'm helping the business because I'm making these decisions. So having a steering actually steer, the clues in the name, right? But actually having them steer the project is a really a good demonstration of an effective governance model.
I love that, and sometimes it's the basic things like a good governance model, clear communication, clear process, clear structure, know who to hold accountable, etc., etc.,
Yeah.
that make a difference. We're not trying to recreate the wheel, right? It's just about doing the basics that we already know. On the note of the steering group, I imagine there's a fine line between having not enough people involved and having too many people involved. Like,
Yeah.
in your opinion, like it's going to vary. There's no such thing as a perfect steering group, but who do you think really needs to be in the steering group to make it as effective as possible?
It's really the people that are ultimately accountable for those areas of the business. So you might have a C-suite member, a COO, that's responsible for multiple areas of the business. That's absolutely fine. But it is that senior leadership that the buck stops with them. They're accountable. They can make that decision because underneath that steering group is essentially a program board, and that is a much larger group of people. Again, it has a representative from every area of the business. Yeah, no matter where they are in the business, they are represented in that group. And again, there might be multiple layers within the program board, lots of people involved because they're the people that's actually doing the work, driving the project forward. And ultimately, that's then getting surfaced up to that steering group. So as long as the steering group is kind of has the ultimate accountability
Mm.
for all those different areas of the business, it doesn't matter how small or large it is, but it's those kind of, it's normally like a C-suite, the COO, the CTO, the CEO, CMO, CPO,
Yeah,
CFO
yeah,
type of
yeah,
group,
yeah, yeah.
that they're going to be that steering group because obviously they're accountable for the business.
Nice. Thank you. Moving on to the next question then, and this is one of the questions I really like because it really draws out from your experience and hearing some of the war stories that you've probably encountered over the years in digital transformation. But what are the top challenges that you faced in digital transformations, and how have you overcome them?
Um, so I think complexity, I think we touched on it earlier as well. Just people are having to deal with at an enterprise level have to deal with such complex landscapes, and actually complexity lies across people as well as technologies as well as process. And I know, the phrase has been around for a long time, but I still do believe on it. You've got to navigate, how are the teams going to operate in the future? What does my team or what do those teams look like, post transformation? How are we going to change operationally as a business? How will we do this process once we are, completed our transformation? And then technically, how the hell are we going to make all this happen? And how's it all going to fit together? So there is that just that real complexity. And I think the other one is, generally people are buying technology, not building it, right? So they're adopting, rather than building it. Um, and I would always say in retail, particularly, if people are looking to build technology, then the question is why? And then if you're taking a platform, it's about adapting to and adopting the platform and the way that the platform changes your business processes. So as in, rather than sort of writing down this is how we do it today, and this is how we will want to do it in the future, and then creating that gap analysis and creating all the change to achieve it. Actually, how does the platform do it today, or what does the platform offer? Okay, great. That's going to be that's going to be our operating process in the future, or that is going to be our feature in the future, rather than trying to retrospectively fit everything into that platform, because essentially you're just going to get into this analysis paralysis place where everything's just going to take a lot longer. You're trying to recreate what you had, but that doesn't mean that it's the right way to do it going forward, because the way you have it was probably in a place where you could specify everything from the ground up. You're recreating things, but actually if you look at a platform, there are millions of people, million merchants using that platform, and it's designed in that way for a reason, is optimized based on all of that feedback and usage. So actually, you should be looking at the way the platform's offering it rather than trying to recreate what you have today.
I yes, no, I really agree. In fact, we had a lady from Valtech on the show in the last season, and she gave a really good analogy there as well, and said when you buy a house, you don't buy a house to then decorate it in exactly the same way as your old house. You buy a house because
Yes,
it's new and you want to enjoy having the extra room or whatever it might be. And I mean, whilst it's different, there's a lot of similarities between what you've just said and actually you get a new piece of software because it does something different, and actually it might reduce the amount of time to go from A to B. So you don't want to start adding in click here and do this and do that, because it's just going to complicate things both in terms of the integration and make it more expensive, but then actually remove the benefits you might receive from getting the new platform anyway.
exactly. I think it's also about speed as well. We talk about this. So would you rather have 85%, there's arbitrary numbers to some respects, but let's go with it, 85% of the functionality quicker, or would you rather have 100% of the functionality, which will take, a significant amount longer? What would you rather have? Well, lo and behold, most people, 99% of people, 95% of people decide, actually, do you know what? I'll take the lesser because I can get it quicker and I can start realizing the value of that from the business. And actually I'll test and learn, and actually I'll decide, do I actually need that extra 5 or 10%? I thought I did, but actually I probably don't in reality. They're probably all nice to have. So let's go with that 85%, and let's move to the next thing that's going to move the business on, rather than perfect it. But of course, there are outliers, and there are business models that absolutely require that extra 10 and 15%. And that's fine. I'm not talking to that. But in general principle term, the thing we always try and promote is, well, is this good enough? Or do you really need that 5, 10%? I also think that a good example of that is Flying Tiger Copenhagen, who's one of our clients as well. They very much adopted a stance of, well, you do tell us what Shopify, because they're already on Shopify, have been for many years, we've operated for them. And their stance is, okay, we're wanting to do this. How does Shopify do it? And actually that will be the basis of our requirements for the change. Um, and if anybody wants to push back on that internally, then they really have to make that case to say, well, we need this extra 5-10% because of X, Y, and Z. And that's fine, but it very rarely does it actually come to fruition. So we go with what Shopify can offer out of the box, and that provides the basis of those features. An example of that would be discounts that they've launched. Obviously, they actually started internally, starting to define, okay, these are all the discounts that we want or we think we want, and the CTO turned around, well, actually, no, discounts. What does Shopify offer? That will be the basis of the business offering, and only if you can justify it will we go over and above that. So I really like that, the way that they've really embraced that as a principle. I mean, I talk about it as a general principle, but they've really baked it into the way that they kind of drive their features forward. They just go, well, okay, what does Shopify do today? Yep, that'll be good for phase one. Let's get it out there and get it done quickly and get the value from it. And as I said, test and learn and see if we need to enhance upon it. So
I like that. It's really good. It's a really good ethos to have. Like you said, get it out there, get the value, test, learn. Do we need the extra 10%? If not, cool. What else is going to move that needle forward?
exactly.
And invest in there. I think that kind of leads quite nicely onto how we're seeing things play out in the market right now. There's obviously been a big push over the last 5 years to move composable. We're starting to see um, Adobe, SAP, Salesforce come back in the mix. Shopify's always been there as a challenger. Obviously, that's really pushing enterprise now as well. But I feel it's because companies bit off more than they could chew. They were sold a dream about being best of breed, and actually, what they didn't realize is just how complex it is. And going to your point, do they need to be 100% best of breed? Probably not. We're seeing the Mac Alliance now come with best of suite, which I
Yeah.
think is probably more aligned to what companies need. Because let's be honest, how often are you going to be replacing your search or your PIM, right? Like you don't need to replace those areas every couple of years. Um, but I'd be really interested just to hear your thoughts quickly on kind of how you're seeing those conversations play out, because I imagine that's a regular occurrence for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's been a really interesting journey. When I was at ASOS back in the early 2000s, we didn't have the luxury of, buying technology, and there weren't the platforms available at the time. So everything was built from the ground up and everything was custom solution, because that was the only option essentially for us at the time. As things have moved on, it's gone to a best of breed approach, where people have chosen multiple different platforms and tried to stitch them together with various levels of success. And the integration then is the absolute key, and some people have got it right, and some people haven't managed to do so. And then we've kind of moved into this phase where actually now we just have broader platforms, the Shopify's and others, that has multiple modules within them, that are already integrated behind the scenes, that you can take off the shelf and get there a lot faster without all the complexity. So there's a real shift, as I said, they're commodity off the shelf platforms you can now just buy. And if you're not doing it, well, your competitors are, and your peers are. So you're ultimately going to be putting your business at risk if you're not taking a platform such as that. So I think the approach has really changed as the options have also changed as well. Um, when it comes to building technology, and I think this point probably still stands as to whether you're, in the big-headed versus headless debate as well. I still come back to why. I still think you just need to ask that question all the time. Somebody said, well, we need to build a complete custom platform or a custom front end or even just a custom component. Why? What is that? Why can't you, not take something off the shelf? Why do we need to? Well, what's that value that it's going to provide? What's the competitive advantage it's going to give us by building this piece rather than, buying the technology? Because, these people have and those people have. So why aren't we doing that? And so I just think it's just worth you just got to ask that question, why do we need to do it? And I do agree. I think there are places that you would be building certain pieces of technology to give you that advantage. So, I'm not against it, but I'm just saying that as a whole, as a CTO or a member of the C-suite, I'd just be asking that question, why, and what are our other options? And again, just letting that steering group decide. Even the steering groups go, okay, well, because that's the other thing that I see as well. People come up with, okay, we need to build this because of these requirements, and he goes all the way up to steering group, and the steering group go, okay, that gives me that, but you've also given me this other option over here, which means that I can go faster, and I don't have everything. But actually, I didn't want that one differentiator that's forced you into a build route. So actually, I'll take this option now because I didn't want that extra thing it's going to give me anyway, but you thought I did. And I can get there quicker and cheaper, so I'll probably go that route. Do you see what I mean? So
Mm.
again, we just come back to that effective steering and helping to make that decision. And it's not technology driving with solutions because they think something. It's actually, no, what are the business requirements? Are those really the business requirements? Right. These are your options. Present them to steering. Steering decides, actually, I don't need that custom thing. Actually, I'll go this way. Or perhaps they do, and that's fine as well. But let them make that decision and walk into eyes wide open rather than the tech teams go, "Yeah, we must build this from a custom perspective." Sorry, it's a bit multifaceted, that answer, but because it touches on so much of our previous conversation, it's
Mm.
all interlinked. It's not just ones and zeros, not so binary necessarily all the time.
Yeah, and I guess it goes back to like some of the associations you have with words and phrases. It's like, right, headless, better personalization, quicker, like et cetera, et cetera. And it's not always the case. And that, like you
No,
said very, very well, you could have all of this over here for X, or you could have all of this for Y, but actually you
yeah,
don't need the plus this anyway. So actually just go with this. It's quicker and
yeah,
it saves you money. Kind of
yeah.
a no-brainer when you put it out like that, isn't it, really? Let's be
And
honest.
And then there's the myths, right? That you need to get through. Oh, headless, you can get a faster site because it's headless. No, not true. Absolutely not true. Oh, better SEO because we're headless. No, not true. Not true. We can prove it all day long, but people walk in, with their experience thinking that that's the case and therefore driving a technology decision in that way. So I think it's also about debunking, things as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a list a mile long of those myths as well. They're just probably two of the common
Yeah.
ones. Even I've heard of them.
Yeah.
So look, I know we are pressed for time, so let's move on to the final topic and something I'm sure is going to come up a lot in the season, and that is talking about AI and kind of what the future holds. I believe you guys at FuseFabric are doing something pretty cool with AI, so I'll pass it over to you, Simon, to let us know what the future holds with AI.
It's a really broad, thanks for that really broad handover. I think, yeah, I'm super interested in the space. We have kind of officially, if you like, launched our working title, Fuse Fabric AI Studio, which is a division within Fuse Fabric focused on AI. So a lot of people saying they're doing AI, they're working with AI, but actually, when you scratch the surface, what are they actually doing? From our perspective, we're launching a bunch of services and products around it. We're investing because we have the ability to invest in our business, or investing or recruiting in that area, and really trying to push that area forward. I think that it's a super interesting space. It's moving so fast that even as somebody that just, I'm in it every day, researching it, reading, trying to keep up with it. It's just moving at such a pace. I'm really curious to know how retailers are keeping up with what's on with AI. Because if we're working in AI and working with AI solutions and in agents and models and all the rest of it, and we're struggling to keep up, how on earth are retailers doing that, right? And I think that then comes back to part of our offering, which is, keeping retailers up to date with how, okay, well, this is what where AI is moving to. This is the art of the possible, because that's also another thing. I don't know what I don't know. So, educating retailers about how AI can help. Um, and I think it's just about, at this point, a lot of it is around, ideating and consultancy through to creating proof of concepts to show how AI can help within the business, through to creating and the reason what I'll explain is through to creating production solutions, but definitely going into that with your eyes wide open, knowing that that solution will be out of date very quickly. And I really believe that. I think if someone's investing in like if someone's investing in an AI solution for a 3-year term, I don't understand it. I can't get my head around that because it's moving literally week on week or month to month at the moment. How can you invest in one solution thinking that solution, like you would normally traditionally invest in a platform for at least 3 years? I want to see a business case for 3 years. I don't see how you can do that with an agentic solution that just changes all the time. I just don't understand it. And I think the CFOs have got a real challenge on their hands because you know what a CFO's like. They're like, show me that where this thing's going to stay in place for 3 years and et cetera, et cetera. It's not going to happen. It's going to be,
Yes,
we're going to
six
put
months
this
will
in
be out of
place.
date.
Yeah, we're going to do this, and in 6 months we'll probably change it, and it's going to do. It's still probably going to achieve the same thing, but it'll need to be a different solution because that solution's now no longer because that model's deprecated, or actually there's a whole new AI capability here that can just do much more of it more efficiently at a lower cost and faster. Therefore, we're going to re-implement the solution. So the CFOs have got a real challenge on their hands. And I think retailers got a challenge on their hands as well, just to keep up with the pace. I also think that there isn't a one size fits all when it comes to AI. I don't think that there's an AI platform that's going to just, at this point anyway, we're just going to swap this whole thing out and put in an AI platform. I think it's about looking at the processes, for example, within a reseller and thinking, okay, where can I use AI in order to improve and automate and make efficiencies or lower my cost of ownership? And then deploying AI solutions that are point solutions right now in those areas, and also knowing that they're going to change going forward as well. I think that's the way that I would approach it. I also think there's probably three key areas. One is around operational efficiencies. So, I said, how do I automate, speed up, lower cost of ownership? So, for example, how do I get a product onto the site quicker from buying and merchandising function through to photo shoot, through to operational readiness, through to publishing, that kind of whole process. That's an example of an operational process. There are plenty more in retailers, and those listening will know in their minds what those are. The other ones is more data analytics. How can I use this data to drive decisions and AI solutions within those areas? And then the other one, I think the big bucket is content as well. How can I use AI to generate more engaging, richer content at speed, lower cost, etc. And so I think content's another area. And there's probably another couple of buckets that I've yet to identify, but in my mind, those are those three areas that retailers should be looking for. As I said, I don't think there's one big platform. I think that retailers will generally start to get used to using AI because all the products that they're using have AI being introduced to them. Do you see what I mean? So they're going to be using AI within those different products, but also then I think deploying AI solutions throughout the back, sort of outside of those products, throughout their processes as well. And just over time, we will just get introduced to more AI-led features and areas. But one of the questions that I am interested in at the moment, I don't have a way to solve this, is how do we educate the workforce in general to think about AI more when they're thinking through solutions? So, for example, if I have generally teams work, I have a requirement. The solution to that is to write down a process, put in a system, and some manual intervention to make this thing work. How do we actually bring to the forefront? The first question is what elements of what AI models, agentic solutions, platforms are there out there that could solve this requirement? Okay, now there's none. So now we're going to do this, we're going to develop. So how do we actually make that the first question that the people ask? And again, it comes back, I think it's just general education. People, just getting used to reading about it and researching it themselves. As I said, being introduced to it through the products that they're using every day as well. But I'm really fascinated to see how that really starts to play into that conversation around, when they're solving business problems. And I think at that point, then we'll really see some change and acceleration in AI.
It's I mean, you mentioned a lot.
Sorry, yeah, I feel like I
Yeah,
just went like a lot at you, but
I
you
know.
asked the question really
Yeah, that's
wide.
it.
So
No, I was
yeah,
just sat there kind of
yeah,
processing it all, and also I love the way you broke it down into those three key areas, and operational data, content. We're seeing real use cases in all of those areas right now, which I think is really cool. Obviously, some businesses are doing it far better than others, and there's certainly a lot of room for growth in those areas. Um, for me, I think the biggest thing is just that educating yourself, but from credible sources. You can't go on a vendor's website anymore and not see AI chucked
mm,
about at least 50 times on their homepage.
yeah,
It is absolutely everywhere. I'm on my Instagram, I'm on my Facebook, my LinkedIn. Every other post is either talking about AI and its use cases, or even it's written or whatever in AI. So it is everywhere in life. And I think seeing how it's becoming adopted is quite cool. A little bit scary, but cool. And I think where we're going to be in 2 or 3 years is going to
yeah.
be pretty insane.
Yeah, exactly. 2 or 3 years, exactly that. Because I think at the moment everyone is either thinking they're using AI because they're using ChatGPT in the background or something like that, thinking that's AI. And yes, it is. And probably last year you'd be like, yeah, that you're really using it. But this year, no, like that's just a given, right? There's so much more happening. And actually, who's actually got something in production at scale that is an AI-based solution? You know, I said obviously these products are coming through with AI in them as well, but who's actually deploying AI solutions within the business as well? I think few and far between. I think a lot of people are thinking about it or feeling the pressure that they need to, because that's another thing. You know, everyone's asking them shareholders, board members, like how are we using AI? Because then they understand that AI can basically essentially optimize the business and reduce the cost of ownership. So they're feeling the pressure, but they're also like, I actually know how we're going to really leverage this technology. I think that's a real challenge at the moment. Yeah,
I guess time will tell, and we'll find out soon. I
yeah,
say soon, two or
absolutely.
3 years, maybe
Yeah,
maybe a little bit quicker. But there we
yeah.
go. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining me. I really enjoyed that conversation, Simon. Thank you.
No worries, and thanks for having me as well. Yeah, I've really enjoyed the conversation as well.
Awesome. Well, I hope all our listeners enjoyed it as well. Safe to say we covered an awful lot there. I look forward to listening to this one back because that's when I really get to grips with the insights that you've shared. But you obviously coming from a very credible background, Simon. You've been through and you've seen a lot. And yeah, I really do believe that the conversation, particularly around the discovery, the importance, and how you break it down to maximize the success from it, is going to be of interest to many. So look, thank you for listening. Please do like, share, comment, and spread the words. We're season 7 now, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Goodbye.